What the? Fugitive Kaitlin Armstrong found time to have a fling in Costa Rica. Hello and welcome to True Crime Rocket Science, the most authentic voice in true crime. So recent news is that a fellow from Costa Rica, a guy called Teal Akerson, met Ari outside the Good Life tattoo shop in Costa Rica. Ari told Teal that she'd just been through a traumatizing breakup. That's been making headlines in the Austin News-Statesman and also the New York Post, Daily Mail, and so on. Now, incredibly, Teal actually knew about the case in Austin, Texas. So he was following the news, but he didn't link the woman in front of him to the images in the news. Now, if you look at Teal's Instagram, he does seem to be a fellow who is sort of floating around and kind of having a good time, not necessarily a critical thinker. But anyway, once again, this is proof that Kaitlin's disguise, for all intents and purposes, worked. Before we get to the rest of this episode, if you haven't subscribed to the channel, please do. Like, share, leave a comment. Bear in mind, later today at 3 p.m. Eastern, I'll be going through part 2 in a live discussion of Baby, I Want You Back So Bad. And I think you're going to find that to be a really interesting analysis. So make sure you don't miss that. I'll put a link to that live in the description. So going back to the article in the Austin American Statesman, Teal Akerson explained that he was aware of the case. He was aware of what happened to Mo Wilson. But the change in her appearance meant that he didn't really put any of it together. He also described the circumstances where they met. He said that they initially spoke outside of a tattoo shop, and have a look at this place. It's called Good Life Tattoo. And so this is the setting where Ari, that's Kaitlin Armstrong, bumped into Teal Akerson. That was where he was hanging out. Now, not to put too fine a point on it, but this channel has recently focused on the role of cannabis and what that may have played in altering Brian Laundrie's reality, as well as Robert Crimo. Now we see it popping up again. Teal said that they spoke outside of this tattoo shop, and then he saved her number on his phone as Ari Tattoo, and then after that the pair smoked cannabis and then spent time together. And incredibly, they spent time together up until just 3 days before she was arrested. And so this is Teal's description of what he experienced with Kaitlin. He said, quote, Ari was a strange person. I met her outside the tattoo shop. Her friends were getting tattoos and she was awaiting out there on the bench, and I was having a beer in the lounge. It became apparent to me that she was trying to have a conversation, trying to get to know me. So I began talking to her and we ended up sharing numbers. Now, I think what's quite interesting there is that her friends were getting tattoos, but Kaitlin wasn't. And I think Kaitlin, as far as I know, doesn't have any tattoos. So anyway, so if you just think about it, she goes to a tattoo shop, but she's not actually getting any tattoos, right? It shows you that she's, to some extent, an individual, not necessarily following the crowd. Then Teal says, quote, we went on a bunch of dates, but she said that she'd been through a real traumatizing breakup and she hadn't healed from it yet and wasn't ready to get close at all. So we were just being friends. We wanted to go out to a different place. We went to a bunch of different spots, but most of the time she wanted to be at a secluded spot where there were not a lot of people, end quote. So that makes sense. It makes sense that she would not want to be in a place where there were a lot of people. Of course, she was actually already endangering herself just by being with one person. Now, one wonders what she meant by, not wanting to get real close. Obviously it means she didn't want to have a very intense relationship. Now, in terms of that, if you are quite surprised that she moved on from Colin, well, actually she didn't. You actually get the sense that she wanted company. She wanted not to be alone. She wanted friendship. And she probably really was traumatized and not ready for a proper relationship. I do think it's interesting, the fellow that she chose to not confide in, but spend her time with. a guy who is definitely not going to be analyzing her or thinking about her critically, a very much go-with-the-flow dude. And you really get that go-with-the-flow surfer, everything's cool man vibe with Teal. If you go into his Instagram, he's got quite a lot of pictures of mushrooms, and one can only imagine what that's all about. Teal went on to say, quote, "I didn't put any of it together. You wouldn't imagine it. After it all happened, I heard what she was really doing, and running from it made sense, why she didn't want to be seen, why she wanted to go to secluded places, and it all kind of made a little more sense," end quote. So what's also interesting is when Ackerson met Kaitlin, she actually had a bandage on her nose, and she'd also told him that was from a surfing accident, right? But the thing that I think is quite interesting is that Teal nevertheless seems to sort of pursue her. Not sure whether he wants a relationship with her, but he seems to spend quite a lot of time with her, even though she's not in an ideal place, either emotionally or physically. She's got this wound on her face, on her nose, and she's also not ready to take things to another level, and yet he's prepared to deal with it. He's prepared to sort of be her friend. I also wonder whether they spoke at all about mountain biking, because there are images on his Instagram where he appears to be a mountain biker. He certainly seems to be a guy who's quite physically fit and a sort of nature's child kind of person. Of course, I think a lot that would be a description that would fit a lot of people in Costa Rica at that time. So apparently the penny dropped when Armstrong was arrested, and then he said he only recognized her when the post-surgery images surfaced, I guess, in the media. And then he recognized, or he realized that he knew who this person was, right? So I'm not going to take it further than that, except to say, to provide this sort of epilogue from the New York Post. It's quite a strange, ironic conclusion where they say that after Kaitlin Armstrong was taken away from Don John's, an Argentinian dude that she'd met on the bus came into Don John's looking for work. And then what he apparently said to the people at Don John's was, "I know Ari." And then they responded saying, "No, you don't know Ari." Okay, so I'm not going to take it further than that. What I want to just remind you of is the live at 3 p.m. Eastern, where we're going to go a lot deeper into Colin Strickland. It's really I've already written the script for that. That's really going to be quite interesting. It's part 2 to the "Baby, I Want You Back So Bad" thing that I put up not that long ago. The other thing we're going to look at briefly is Teal Ackerson's Instagram, just to get a sense of the life that Kaitlin was pursuing in Costa Rica. So make sure you don't miss it. As I said, I'll put a link to the live in the description. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you guys next time.